The fallout continuing tonight following the resignation of Las Vegas Raiders coach Jon Gruden. Resigning last night after years of emails laced with racist, misogynistic, and homophobic comments came to light. The emails sent while he was working as a football analyst on ESPN. So that network telling CNN, and I quote here, "The comments are clearly repugnant under any circumstance." But is this just a sign of a deeper problem or deeper problems in the NFL? Joining me now, Stephen A. Smith, star of ESPN's First Take and Stephen A's World on ESPN Plus, and newest member of NBA Countdown. Listen, the resume is long and well-deserved, the accomplishments. Stephen A., thanks for joining us. Let's get into this. Floodgates open after this Wall Street Journal reported in 2011 email where Gruden said that, this about NFL Players Association executive DeMarcus Smith, and I'm going to quote here, he goes, dumb Borses Smith has lips the size of Michelin tires. And the Times report that he called the commissioner, Roger Goodell, a faggot and a clueless anti-football pussy. That was in 2012. And he called then VP, now president, a nervous, clueless pussy. He also criticized President Barack Obama. He also shared sexist memes about female referees, denounced the Rams recruiting a gay player in 2014. I mean, he's offended just about
everybody.
Everybody.
I give him credit for this. He didn't miss. I can tell you that much. He offended everybody, and obviously it's a tongue-in-cheek, but because he doesn't deserve credit for any of this, he deserves to be shamed, and that's exactly what has happened to him. My initial response when the first email came out, I was a bit hesitant to call for his firing and his dismissal or even the suspension, Don, because I was of the mindset it's one email that happened in 2010 about DeMaurice Smith, the executive director of the NFL Players Association, and I thought the shame and having to apologize and look black players and black colleagues in the face knowing what you said and how you described DeMaurice Smith was enough. But then, as of last night, according to the New York Times, we heard all of these reports, and you didn't want a woman to be an official. Michael Sam, who is gay, you didn't feel that Roger Goodell should be encouraging Jeff Fisher, then the coach of the Rams, to be drafting a queer. And then obviously he felt that Eric Reed, the guy that was a former teammate of Colin Kaepernick's who kneeled with Colin Kaepernick, he felt he should have been fired. So you offended black people, you offended the gay community, you offended women, you offended the commissioner who you didn't have the greatest relationship with to begin with, you offended the vice president of the United States, you offended the former president of the United States. I mean, the list just goes on and on. He didn't miss anybody. And that is why he had to go. But clearly, it was shocking considering the fact that he worked at ESPN. I can tell you I never saw that kind of language or any indication of that kind of behavior from him at all. It was very shocking. But once the news came out, he absolutely had to go. And I can assure you, if he was still working for ESPN, he would have been gone in a nanosecond.
Well,
Trust me on that.
Look, he wasn't even part of the investigation. This is an investigation into the Washington football team, and they uncovered that, about the Washington football team's workplace environment. Is this the tip of the iceberg?
Absolutely.
From the NFL, I mean.
Yes, and what I mean by that, Don, is this. There's only really two minority owners in the National Football League. There's Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who's from Pakistan, if I remember correctly, and there's Kim Pegula of the Buffalo Bills. She's the only female. That is it. There's no black representation. There's no other minority representation of any kind on an ownership level, and don't even get me started with the executive level. Don, take this into consideration, Don. Jon Gruden won the Super Bowl in 2002. He remained in Tampa for the next 6 years. He made the playoffs twice. That's it. After that, comes to Monday Night Football, completely removed from coaching for over a decade, and then signs on to take over the Raiders at the price of $100 million over 10 years with bonuses that would take his salary up to $118, $120 million. Now, I only bring that up to say this. Is that happening for a black person? There's no way in hell that's happening for a black person.
70% of the roster in NFL players, black, by the way.
Yes.
So, Steve, let me ask you, because I want to get to, I'm going to reduce a little time here, so just bear with me.
Sure.
So I want to ask you two things. the first thing is the conservatives are saying this is cancel culture because he was, he worked for ESPN, and you go back through your emails, what have you. But he is a team leader, not just a player. He's doing the hiring and setting the rules and the example. No, I don't know. What do you think?
Listen, I don't mind all of that. I know plenty of conservatives. I'm a registered independent. I happen to know a lot of conservatives and a lot of Democrats. I don't get caught up. I'm a fair-minded individual. I'm about right and wrong. And if they say something that's right, I'm going to give them credit for it. And if they say something wrong, I'm going to disagree, albeit respectfully as much as I possibly can. But there's this concerted effort to politicize things that don't need to be politicized. We're talking about a core decency. That's what we're talking about here, a core decency issue. As a human being living in the United States of America, yes, the country is changing and what have you, and people are coming out and they're being more open about where they feel, where they stand, what their sexual orientation is, how they want to live their lives, et cetera, et cetera.
Society's changing.
And society's changing, and as long as you're not breaking any laws, you understand, and inconveniencing other people, it's not, as far as I'm concerned, it's none of our business. Too many people don't adopt that mentality, and that's part of where the problem lies, and that's what we talk about when we talk. People use the word progressive. I use the word tolerance, understanding. Listen, everybody's life is not yours, and your life doesn't belong to everybody else. As long as you ain't bothering anybody else and ain't breaking any laws, chill out.
Yeah.
Live and let live. But a lot of people don't feel that way, and that's where the problem lies.
I want to ask you, though, just real quick, the Kyrie Irving situation, what do you think? He's been...
Well-deserved. The mandate is in New York. It's in L.A. now. It's in San Francisco. If this man does not get vaccinated, he would be violating the mandate, and as a result, he would miss 41 home games for the Brooklyn Nets, plus a couple of games at Madison Square Garden against the New York Knicks, plus a game in L.A., plus a game in San Francisco. That amounts to about 44 to 45 games. I'm sorry, if you can't take a vaccine that over 6.2 billion people in the world have already taken, trying to claim that you think there's some kind of conspiracy going on, and you want to be that defiant and leave the rest of your team hanging, the Kevin Durant's, the James Harden of the world, when you are clearly the favorite to win the title. As far as I'm concerned, the hell with you. Sit him down, let him stay home, don't pay him a dime, and let him live his life. If that's what he wants to do, yes, he has the freedom and the right to do what he wants to do. They also have the right to tell him, see ya, it was nice knowing you. You don't need to be a part of the NBA anymore. I have no problem with that position.
Stephen A. Smith, thank you, sir. See you next time.
My man.
Be safe.
No problem.
Be safe. Thank you very much.